You won't know till you see that, Dan.
I saw the
um,
roll.
oh, you
Seen
did.
the roll.
What do you reckon?
Nice.
What do you reckon, mate? Yeah, that's why the shirt. I took the
Yes.
challenge. Jethro said, "Oh, he looks a lot like Magnum PI," and the music stuck in my head for the morning. I thought, yes, it's Movember. Let's do this.
Okay. Awesome. You look
Yeah,
great.
cool,
And
cool.
so you may not know this, but there's actually a Magnum PI reboot.
I hear this.
Yes.
It's probably not going to
So
get here till like some network here buys it or Netflix plays it in 3 years' time.
uh, I understand that. But it's a decent show, especially for those that nostalgia who, grew up or remember the other shows. So it's I think we're about 8 episodes in
Hmm.
the reboot. So yeah.
No, I'll look for it when it comes out and get out the Hawaiian shirt and pretend I'm driving a Ferrari Testarossa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. So, Daryl, we have a tremendous show today. Well, okay, let's not say that. We have a tremendous amount to cover in the show today.
we do, we do.
So we've got a bunch of content for Teams and for mobile apps and for SharePoint. So we also, I saw though an issue, and we talked about this with that we may need to touch on. And you did a video on this discussing this Teams
Yeah.
or this communication issue with not issue, but the situation with small business. So
Hmm.
what's that all about?
Well, it's worth a soapbox. We'll get back to it, but it is about the upgrade from Skype to Teams, and that it got a bit of help. Maybe um, well, not an unannounced help, but just it was very quite sudden. So we'll come back to that. Um, let's get into the messages, and we won't do each of them because there are so many. I just want to make sure that that's nice and visible. 150% sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's an interesting look here this week because we have major updates, and
Mhm.
this is a major update, November 13th. But one of my comments about this other, what I would call very major update, it didn't appear there at all, and it still isn't there. So as we look at that first one, this is really quite simple to cover off. That Mac users, if you aren't using Skype for Business and you wanted to join a meeting, you would need to
Mhm.
download the meeting client. They've simplified that, and you can now download the full client and use that even if you don't have a Skype for Business account. So good
Yep.
news there. It means that you're prepared to use Skype if you need to, although we all move into Teams.
Yeah.
But it's good to be able to consolidate on one client and make sure that the all the efforts go into that.
Yep.
As we move on up, and this is really one that I think we need to spend a bit of time on. I know
Yep.
that
I
I
agree.
looked through the list and thought, oh my goodness, this is such good news. Um,
Mhm.
Take it away, Dan. Let's talk about maybe our picks for what's great in this announcement.
Sure. So this one is all about obviously SharePoint and about new updates. And this is something that if you've been paying attention and if you're at Ignite or if watched videos from Ignite or even blog posts leading up, I mean, it's been talked about all these new advancements and enhancements to SharePoint Online. So you see the list here, customize the title area. This is something that we have. There's been some comments made about this. How to take the title area and not and use that space functionally. So being able to change the layouts and displaying content there. So on pages,
Mm.
saving page as a template and having a template gallery. What we've and I've experienced this myself when I did a presentation in SharePoint Saturday, New York, with Sarah Hazy. We talked about how you could take SharePoint and use it as a repository for Microsoft Flow templates. But what we did is we used SharePoint Pages as the place to where you can create that, have that content, tell the user about
Mm.
it and such. But the way you had to do it is you copy an existing page,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And when you do that, the it doesn't handle it correctly in modern. It makes whoever created the first page the person who created it the second page, which is not the way you want it. You
Mm.
want
Mm.
templates, and so being able to have page templates is a fantastic thing, and have that template gallery.
Well, I'll
Um,
just say something there, Dan.
yep.
Daniel. The reason that that I really like that announcement is that it again makes it more accessible to those people who are into patterns and practice and doing
Hmm.
things the
That's
coding
right.
way. That you can take that page, you can set it up just the way you want. You can put in placeholders and drop in text to say, replace this here, save it as a template, and that is just so much more accessible for those of us who don't have that coding experience.
Yep. It's nice. It really is. The one of those on here on the list, and I'll stop and let you talk about the ones you like, but um, the one about changing the shading of sections, I love this. This is such a small thing,
Hmm.
but when you're looking at a page, a modern page, it's white or whatever color, right background, and that's it. And you can't do visually, you can't break up the different sections very well.
Well,
And
I've been doing
this
that
is
by
helping with
changing
that.
the layout of a section, and that's about the only thing we had.
Right. No, and that's yes. And so that's when I love this to be able to just add some shading. I know it's very small, but I love having that background shading on sections.
Mm, mm.
So what about you? What are I mean there's lots of what do we have about I don't know 16, 15,
Yeah,
20 whatever
there's a
here.
lot there.
Pick out
There's a
some
lot
yeah.
there. And look, really encourage you to check out the announcement itself and go through to the roadmap items and the various
Yep.
different Ignite videos as well that demonstrated some of these things because they
Hmm?
haven't quite landed yet. Going back to
No.
that page,
I have
save a
one
page as a template.
I have one though in there. So
You do,
that's
you do.
I have one more. So go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, so that saving page as a template, we also have a new page template gallery. So when you go to save that page, you've got your custom templates that you might have created, and you've also got a new way of framing up the Microsoft templates that they make available out of the box. So we are able to make these templates and make them again accessible, easy to select from, even if you're not into creating pages. Um,
Yep.
there's the event roll up across multiple sites, which I quite like too. That earlier you could put events on the page that had to do with that site,
Hmm.
but being able to grab all those events and say, here's what's happening in your team or what's happening in your business unit, but also across the org, here are the events that might sit in this category as well, and you might want to attend those or
Hmm.
be part of that. So it's creating those nice linkages between all the different sites, and of course this is going to be quite useful for hub sites as well. Lastly, and I've been waiting for this, I'm really looking forward to see it come out, is the Yammer Embed Full Conversations. Now,
Hmm.
some people would say, well, what's that about? Haven't we already got a new Yammer modern web part? And yes, we have. But like me, it is what they are now going to be terming the highlight web part, because you can take selected conversations, recent conversations, and they appear as cards, but you haven't been able
Hmm.
to interact with it. You've had to go
Right.
back to the classic modern embed. So now we're going to have the modern web part for embedding that Yammer conversation. And this
Yep.
is where you start to see having conversation alongside content within the org. And that really, I don't mind if people don't visit the Yammer page at all. What I want to see is the way that people can interact with content and still get into those conversations across the org. And I think that's
Hmm.
the way to do it, is have this great embed. I think also they're leveraging that for Microsoft Live events. So when you're going to
Right.
attend an event and you're using Yammer as your conversation, that's how they're embedding it into Teams. That's how they're embedding it into Stream as well, and the landing page for that. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can tell I'm excited about it. Let's move on. You had one other thing that
Well,
you wanted to
I
say
did
about
have one
here.
more, and I'll just talk the quick charts. This is something that I've been talking about for, I don't know, a year and a half. When it first came out, it was very simple kind of functionality of a web part. And I've been working with the product team on this of how it can be
Oh,
improved. So I'm really excited to see this be announced and be released. In that the first thing that is being improved is that being able to use a SharePoint list as your source of your data. Before it was manual input, and so now being able to, this is like, entry level BI stuff, very entry level, but to be able to just put a quickly put a chart on the page and point it to SharePoint list and saying voila, right? So anyway, fantastic.
Yeah, actually, before we move on, if you
Oh,
are into informing your people about what's going on and changing, there is one other web part that you might consider popping in there. You could do this earlier using just the regular old embed web part, but you now have a YouTube embed web part. So if you want to embed our channel, maybe even change up the live event as you go and visit, feel free to do that.
maybe you should have a hub site for Office 365 changes, and you
Yes.
should embed our show
Yes.
using the new YouTube web part. I like it.
Yeah, that's right. Because we do talk end user level as well as IT
Right.
pro level. Yeah, we're keeping it even. All right, so that's enough there, or rather, that's a starter. We've hopefully whet your taste buds so that you can go and check it out yourself. We've got a scoped directory search in Microsoft Teams. So we're familiar with this in Exchange, where you can scope the directory and say that these people can only see this group of people within the directory. And this becomes quite useful in, let's say, education, where you want to be able to just show students to students and not necessarily teachers. Some schools choose to do that. And so you're able to do this within teams, and when you go to add people to a team and you're working with membership, what I will say is that it isn't a security barrier. It is really more an obscuring of the list of people and scoping it down. You will still, if you're in the same tenant, and if you're trying to get that two businesses in one tenant effect, then this is just to scope the directory, not to segregate or separate people in a secure fashion.
Right.
All right.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. New Outlook for Windows diagnostic collection of information. I honestly didn't look into that. Sounds good.
It's good, but frankly, and I hate to say this for the product team that worked on this, but we just don't have a whole lot of time to talk about this. Maybe we can do a follow-up video or something sometime, but we just don't have a lot of time to cover it.
I think that we're providing tools for people to check their environment out more and see who's using Outlook and what's going on. Actually, that reminds me, there was something interesting that came up there. Just a very quick one. I know that we haven't got much time, but there was some discussion on social media about adding ads to Outlook for Windows. Did you see that, Daniel?
I did not, and I would hate that. I'm the person. I use Outlook.com and I've used it for a while, so that it is actually my personal email anyway through that, and so I paid to remove the ads. Well, they've now gotten rid of that. You can no longer pay to remove ads from Outlook.com. And I did that. So I hate having ads. I would rather pay. It was something like $20 a year or something to remove that. And there was something else that you could get with it. But anyway,
Probably a
I
gigs
don't like
with
the
the
side.
data to your, or a terabyte with the data to
I
your.
don't remember what it was. Yeah, but now they're wanting you to hook it up to Office 365 so that you can get those benefits. And anyway, I don't like that idea of putting ads in Outlook. Period.
Well, according to the live chat, and I didn't set it up, sorry, so I can't show it on screen. But Phil said that, and I know there was quite a bit of discussion. Mary Jo Foley.
Oh, that Mary Jo, yeah.
Paul Thurrott and a few others as well. Looks like they've pulled it. So
Great.
Look, isn't this good that we as a community, when we do put some share our opinions and do that together, that we can affect change and say, we are your customers. This is what we want. Yeah. Cool.
Yep. Moving on.
We have Manage Access in OneDrive for Business and SharePoint Online. What's updated here? The new admin page?
Well, it's the experience to be able to distinguish the users who have access via links and who have access directly. So being able to distinguish that. And this is quick. I want to mention this in that I don't think this is a huge change in functionality, but this is a big change in users and the way they interact. In that this is rolling out by the end of December to everybody, being able to, having this update. So this is one of those things you need to remember. When you're educating your users and informing them that change is going to be happening a lot, right? And that's great, but we just have to be aware of those changes and how it interacts. But this is just making sure that we have an idea of what are the links, and when you go to the manage access pane, being able to see that there's links that are shared and how. So maybe just anyone, it may be people within your organization, listing those links and then listing people who have direct access. So that's what's being talked about here.
Right, yeah. So it's about managing links. I know that it's in the same blog post. It's rolling up a number of announcements, and that finally the OneDrive app on the phone is using that same. Everyone gets the same UI across whatever experience you have. Consistency, yay! Oh, here's the manage access link. Right, so that's cool. Prepare your users by at least just saying this is what it's going to look like, and I think that it's an improvement, definitely. All right, we'll keep on going through. We've got please review your network traffic to prevent service disruption. Now, did you get something like this in your tenant, Dan?
I did, and this is and it's not targeted because and what it's talking about is if you filter CDNs. So this is a content delivery network. This is the way we're speeding up the internet, basically. But if you're filtering using a whitelist for CDNs, then you need to just make sure that you're going to be using the right ones. And so that's what this one's about. And I think it's not targeted because you may not be using it now, but you may use it tomorrow. And you may use it after they implement. I feel like this one's okay. At first I was like, wait, I don't use this, so why is it coming at me here? But I'm okay with it coming at me on this one because this is it will not work, if you're filtering the wrong CDNs, right? If you're not allowing the right ones.
Sarah thinks you're making things up now. I think look, I know there are announcements that drop in there that are not targeted. And look, we even had one from Mike Ziok during Ignite, and he said that this is why it was there, because everyone needed to know, or they may need to know. Look, let's be honest, the Message Center is being used as a marketing tool. It's not necessarily purely just what's happening and changing in your tenant. And I think sometimes things are dropped in like this, and they haven't been targeted properly. So I'm not going to make any more excuses that way.
Yeah,
it depends on the announcement.
And there's some that are not targeted properly, and it is what it is, right? They either can't narrow it down or they didn't. This one I'm a little okay with, like I said, but especially for those IT pros, the people who are managing this, who are about to set things up, and they see this and they're like, oh wait, I need to add these. I am not doing it yet. But I need to add these because this is kind of a big deal. So,
but you'd go to a setup article for that, wouldn't you? You wouldn't necessarily go trawling through your old Message Center to try and find that.
I guess so. I'm trying to.
Don't make excuses for them. It's still a thing that they're perfecting, and we do see it.
And I go to the additional information, and those URLs are not even on there. So
okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So we'll look at the next one. Outlook Mobile simplifies its sync technology, so we are going to be getting a more reliable experience in Outlook on the mobile. Because look, they're changing up a few things here too, and I can't say that I've got any deep expertise in here, but I know that they were fading out an old technology. There it is. Yeah. Is it ActiveSync? Anyway, and it's going to lower the latency between. So I mean, like sometimes you do your refresh and it goes through and it checks. It's checking each of your mailboxes that you've got connected to Outlook, and it takes a while to get there. And I expect that this would speed things up and bring the messages in quickly.
Yeah, they've
Excuse me.
already started rolling this out to Office or Outlook, the consumer.
Hmm.
Um, so it's already been used, and so they're bringing it into it for everybody. And so I'm okay with it. I mean, it actually has been better. So
Hmm.
this is a good change. Now, this is the one that you do need to pay attention to just for your end users. I do like this. How do I prepare for the change? They mention you may wish to inform your help desk about the expected user migration experience, and I think they could actually temporalize that a little bit to say there's nothing you need to do because we see that every week in every message almost. Nothing you need to do except maybe you need to inform your help desk and train your users. I think they should just
Mm.
put that on every one of them. But anyway, so this is a good one, enhancing the experience. So.
Yep, yep. And yeah, definitely when when end users experience is different, then there is something to do. Um,
Hmm.
let's not simplify that. It's called change management.
Yep.
Yeah, let's keep on moving there. Mobile capture scenarios for OneDrive,
Oh,
macOS, and
oh,
Android. Now, is this what is it?
Daryl,
Scanning?
Daryl.
What?
Yes,
What?
this is freaking awesome, Daryl.
Oh,
Because you're able to, this is for SharePoint.
oh,
Um,
this one.
so you
Yes.
could take a picture and add metadata. So
Yep.
those metadata goes into your columns in SharePoint.
Yes, so that would be if you've got a document library and you've added additional columns, you can fill those columns out.
Yep. You
So
can
I could
fill
like,
columns out for metadata for when you're taking pictures. So this is easy scenario is
mm,
for safety, and you're in
okay,
or process improvement, or think about a plant, or whatever. You see something, you take a picture. I'm reporting this as a safety issue, and you
mm,
tell where it was, what part of the plant. Well, you fill out the metadata and submit it.
mm,
Kicks off a workflow. I mean, it's I think there's a lot of, and we've been trying to do this with um, power apps. That scenario has been live for about a year now of take a picture with a power app and then do some magic and a lot of magic to
mm.
actually make it work to where it writes content in and starts a workflow. So I'm loving this as native.
Now, does this mean that? And I think of a couple of other scenarios.
Mhm.
Do we have? I mean, I know we've got more options for metadata in libraries and lists. Do we have anything like a scenario where we can scan and say, if I've arrived at this place, I'm scanning the QR code, and that shows that I am here and I'm checking in?
Mm. Um,
I know we've got location data
I don't
now.
know. I do not know. Yeah, and I think you could do something where QR code, because I know what you're talking about, like
Mm,
security and maintenance and stuff. They have to do that. I don't know if we can go into it now. We
yeah,
don't have a
maybe
lot of
not.
time,
But
but I
I know
think
that
it is
there's
actually really cool because you could do it. What you just said is
yeah.
not only is it a picture, but extrapolate the location and time code, and
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Well, and that was leading me into that thought about retail too. So you've got a stock list. You're checking in to
Hmm.
say that yes, we have set things up in the display the way that it should, or we're giving feedback about a certain product. So you can take that picture and say this is how the stock actually arrived, etc. Very cool. All right. We have location columns in SharePoint Online List. There you go. I preempted that.
Yep.
So this is where you can add an address to an item in a list or a library. Does it
Yep.
say library? Yes, it does. And so that when you open that up, it will take you through to the Bing Maps and show you exactly where that is. So we can leverage that in a number of different ways.
Hmm.
Good to see. Lots of SharePoint goodness today, isn't there?
Yeah,
En-
that's right.
Encryption updates to Outlook for Mac and Outlook for Windows. So we've got what is it? Consistent approach to ribbon on both SMIME and IRM. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
the
and
old encryption button.
it's one of those the have that. they're adding additional functionality so you can, do encrypt only on for Mac users in Outlook, and anything that helps with security, I'm all
Mm.
for. And so this is something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of, I think, is when they're paying more attention to the Mac. I have seen it now. I don't use a Mac, but I've seen a lot more of this where the time between where the feature comes out with for Windows is and when it comes out for Mac is shorter. I think that they should give it even shorter so that we're all secure, not just Windows and then Mac, especially for security, but also functionality. So
Mm.
this is good.
Yeah. At mention comments in SharePoint Online.
Yeah, and
Well,
this is kind of wrapping up the SharePoint announcements this week, and these are all of the ones that we've been talking about for a while. The ones we talked about previously on just a few minutes ago in this one, but being able to mention people, and I think maybe we've talked about this, but be able to mention people, and then them get a notification that you have mentioned them on a
mm,
page.
mm,
So this is pretty slick, and I'm loving it to be able to engage and we yes, is this social? Are we bringing back the social to SharePoint? I don't know about that, but at least if you have a news article, it's like, oh, this is a SharePoint news article, it's fabulous. Make sure so and so has seen it. I
well,
think it's
actually,
great.
Dan, I think looking closer at this, and that's I guess the thing about the title is it talks about being in SharePoint Online, but we're getting into the detail. It's at mentioning within Word and PowerPoint Online, rather than I
Yeah,
think like the comments below. So it's opening up that document, and we could say reply to a comment in there, and you could see who replied. But when you're at
hmm
mentioning now, it will actually send an email off to someone and say you've been mentioned in this document. So the surface area of being mentioned is increasing. Uh, and our email is of course our backstop. It's the catch-all for anything. So if you're not responding
hmm
with the application, whether it be Teams, Yammer, whatever, and now it's within documents as well as conversations in SharePoint. So check your email. It's not going to disappear. It's not going to be displaced by something like Kaizala,
right.
like that interesting diagram I saw today from Stephen Collier. Yeah, but it's a good thing to be able to call out and say you've been mentioned here, and I believe it also takes you through to the position in the document where you were mentioned.
hmm
So that's good too.
Yep.
Um, Users can customize private lists, private discussions in Teams, and I saw this too, where within chat, so it's not just within your team, but now within chat, Dan and I can have a discussion here. We can add our own tab to that discussion and bring in content between us. So it's not just files, it's
Right.
not just conversations, but other tabs as well.
This is
Uh,
all about, enhancing that collaboration experience. So I love it to be able
yeah.
to, it's not just teams, even though that's the product. I'm talking little T teams. It's not just, before to do this experience, it would be me and you getting into a team or into a
Mm,
channel, right? And having our own channel, which, as everyone knows, you can't keep other people out of your channel if we haven't in past been able to keep people out of a channel if they're part of the team. Um, so this is great to bring in then that one-on-one. Let's collaborate. Let's get things done and not have to do it, in front of
mm.
everybody else.
Mm. Yeah, well, I think that group chat is good for that too. Like where we hear,
Mhm.
oh, we are team leaders. We're within this team. We do want to have our private channel. I think that it's actually a good idea to do this within group chat, and this has given us more capabilities to do that, to collaborate. And that seems to be the last one on the list. I know that we're at 30 minutes, 31 now.
Yep.
I just want to make a mention of this little eye in the corner here that if you click on it, you might see something that I talked about in the weekend. We talked about at the beginning of the show. Just to summarize, the small businesses, or what Microsoft considers small businesses of 500 or less, were being automatically upgraded from Skype for Business to Microsoft Teams. Now, I know it's coming, and I know that there's guidance to prepare. In fact, some of that guidance was referenced in messages in the Message Center, but that guidance says that around about 4 to 6 weeks, that you have for preparation. You really need to tell your stakeholders. You need to go through change management. You also need to train up your users, because while we can say, yes, everyone who knows how to use Skype can also use chat and Teams, there's a whole lot more to Teams than that. What I was surprised by, and I saw this as a conversation in the community, was that it went from a message saying you have a year, and then 2 days later you actually have 10 days now. In fact, we're going to do it for you. We're going to upgrade you on this date. And there were plenty of other messages after that, but there was one reference in that second message saying you have 10 days, saying if you want to opt out, contact Microsoft support. And that wasn't a great experience for a lot of people. Now, I know there's some of us that are going, yeah, what's the big deal? It happens. Your end users are going to see a message in Skype, and no big deal. But this goes back to our conversation we had a week or two ago. Microsoft doing things on our behalf and not allowing us to be part of that process when it comes to change management, informing our users, preparing our organization. So if you want to see a bit more detail and discussion and have a look at what those messages look like, my advice really too is that keep an eye out for this message. And I think, as Phil Worrell said, if you are managing a number of tenants, you actually, because these are specific to your tenant, you have to go and check each one of them. You can't just assume that looking at this, that we, that covers everything. Because regarding 365, we use a separate Business Essentials tenant, and while we don't use Skype for Business, if we did, and we had 499 users that had a user contact list, and all of a sudden, boom, it's not working now. Click here to go to Teams. This is your new experience. I love Teams, but I think this was quite an aggressive approach.
Yeah, and I think this just, like you said, calls into the point that we are a resource. We do this for the community out of our own, because we just want to help out, right? But it is not a 100% keeping up with change resource. You need to be following along what's going on, and have our video up and have your message center up and go, oh, there's another one that is not being talked about, and dig into that one. So anyway, we are one source, and we like for you to use us as a resource, but you need to be looking in your tenant and your tenants, if you manage more than one, to keep up with change.
Yeah, that would be partners, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Definitely Microsoft partners looking after managed service providers.
We got through it, Darrell. It only took us 34 minutes.
Yeah, only 34. That was worth it. Thanks for tuning in. As you see, it's still Movember. I'm still thankful for the sponsors that have sponsored me, and thank you for those who are engaging me too in the conversations and periscopes and talking about men's health and IT. Keep an eye out for us next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thankful for everybody tuning in, and thank you for we have in the U.S. Thanksgiving coming up this Thursday, so I am thankful for all of you.
Oh, nice note to finish on. Thanks, Daniel Higgins. Bye.